It was on Earth once, he said. What was? I asked. Paradise. He leaned back on the grass and rested his head on his arms. Sweet paradise. In his Trebes, you mean? No. I mean, Derval, that when God made man, he gave us a paradise in which to live. And it occurs to me that we have been losing that paradise inch by inch ever since. And soon, I think, it will be gone. Darkness descends. He went silent for a while, then sat up as his thoughts gave him a new energy. And just think of it, he said. Not 100 years ago, this land was peaceful. Men built great houses. We can't build like they did. I know Father has made a fine palace, but it's just broken pieces of old palaces cobbled together and patched with stone. We can't build like the Romans. We can't build as high or as beautifully. We can't make roads. We can't make canals. We can't make aqueducts. I did not even know what an aqueduct was, but kept silent as Kiluk snored contentedly beside me. The Romans built whole cities, Galahad went on. Places so vast, Derval, it would take a whole morning to walk from one side of the city to the other, and all of your footsteps would fall on trimmed, dressed stone. And in those days, you could walk for weeks and still be on Rome's land, subject to Rome's laws and listening to Rome's language. Now look at it. He waved at the night. Just darkness. And it spreads, Derval. The dark is creeping into Armorica. Benwick will go. And after Benwick, Brociliand. And after Brociliand, Britain. No more laws, no more books, no more music, no more justice. Only vile men round smoky fires, planning on who they'll kill next day. Not while Arthur lives, I said stubbornly. One man against the dark? Galahad asked sceptically. Wasn't your Christ one man against the dark? I asked. Galahad thought for a second, staring into the fire that shadowed his strong face. Christ, he said finally, was our last chance. He told us to love one another, to do good to each other, to give alms to the poor, food to the hungry, cloaks to the naked. So men killed him. He turned and looked at me. I think Christ knew what was coming, and that was why he promised us that if we lived as he lived, then one day we'd be with him in paradise. Not on earth, Derval, but in paradise. Up there. He pointed to the stars, because he knew the earth was finished. We're in the last days. Even your gods have fled from us. Isn't that what you tell me? That your Merlin is scouring strange lands to find clues to the old gods. But what use will the clues be? Your religion died long ago, when the Romans ravaged Inismon, and all you have left are disconnected scraps of knowledge. Your gods are gone. No, I said, thinking of Nimue, who felt their presence, though to me the gods were always distant and shadowy. Bel, to me, was like Merlin, only far away and indescribably huge and far more mysterious. I thought of Bel as somehow living in the far north, while Manawydan must live in the west, where the waters tumbled endlessly. The old gods are gone, Galahad insisted. They abandoned us because we are not worthy. Arthur is worthy, I said stubbornly, and so are you. He shook his head. I am a sinner so vile, Derval, that I cringe. I laughed at his abject tone. Nonsense, I said. I kill, I lust, I envy. He was truly miserable. But then Galahad, like Arthur, was a man who was forever judging his own soul and finding it wanting. And I never met such a man who was happy for long. You only kill men who would kill you, I defended him. And, God help me, I enjoy it. He made the sign of the cross. Good, I said. And what's wrong with lust? It overcomes reason. But you're reasonable, I pointed out. But I lust, Derval. How I lust. There is a girl in Innistribes, one of my father's harpists. He shook his head hopelessly. But you control your lust, I said. So be proud of that. I am proud of it. And pride is another sin. I shook my head at the hopelessness of arguing with him. And envy? I offered him the last of his trinity of sins. Whom do you envy? Lancelot. Lancelot? I was surprised. Because he is Edling, not I. Because he takes what he wants, when he wants, and does not seem to regret it. That harpist? He took her. She screamed, she fought, but no one dared stop him. For he was Lancelot. Not even you? I would have killed him, but I was far from the city. Your father didn't stop him. My father was with his books. He probably thought the girl's screams were a gull calling into the sea wind, or two of his Fili having a squabble about a metaphor. I spat into the fire. Lancelot is a worm, I said. No, Galahad insisted. He is simply Lancelot. He gets what he wants, and he spends his days plotting how to get it. He can be very charming, very plausible, and he could even be a great king. Never, I said firmly. And truly, if power is what he wants, and it is, and if he receives it, then perhaps his appetites will be slaked. He does want to be liked. He goes a strange way about it, I said, remembering how Lancelot had taunted me at his father's table. Well, he knew from the first that you were not going to like him, and so he challenged you. That way, when he makes an enemy of you, he can explain to himself why you don't like him. But with people who don't threaten him, he can be kind. He might be a great king. He's weak, I said scornfully. Galahad smiled. Strong Derval. Derval the doubtless. You must think we're all weak. No, I said, but I think we're all tired, and tomorrow we have to kill Franks. So I'll sleep. And next day we did kill Franks. And afterwards we rested in one of Ban's hilltop forts, before, with our wounds bandaged and our battered swords sharpened, we went back into the woods. Yet week by week, month by month, we fought closer to Innistribes. King Ban called on his neighbour, Boudic of Brasilian, to send troops, but Boudic was fortifying his own frontier and declined to waste men on defending a lost cause. Ban appealed to Arthur, and though Arthur did send one small shipload of men, he did not come himself. He was too busy fighting Saxons. We did get news from Britain, though such news was infrequent and often vague. But we heard that new hordes of Saxons were trying to colonize the Middle Lands and pressing hard on Dumnonia's borders. Gorfithid, who had been such a threat when I left Britain, had been quieter of late, thanks to a terrible plague that had afflicted his country. Travellers told us that Gorfithid himself was ill, and many thought he would not last the year. The same sickness that had afflicted Gorfithid had killed Cynwyn's betrothed, a prince of Reged. I'd not even known she was betrothed again, and I confess that I felt a selfish pleasure that the dead prince of Reged would not marry the star of Powys. Of Guinevere, Nimue, or Merlin, I heard nothing. Ban's kingdom crumbled. There were no men to gather the harvest in the last year, and that winter we huddled in a fortress on the southern edge of the kingdom, where we lived on venison, roots, berries, and wildfowl. We still made an occasional raid into Frankish territory, but now we were like wasps trying to sting a bull to death, for the Franks were everywhere. Their axes rang through the winter forests as they cleared land for their farms, while their new-built stockades of brightly split logs shone in the pale wintry sun. Early in the new spring, we fell back before an army of Frankish warriors. They came with drums beating and under banners made of bull horns mounted on poles. I saw one shield wall of over 200 men, and knew our 50 survivors could never break it. And so, with Killock and Galahad either side of me, we retreated. The Franks jeered and pursued us with a hail of their light throwing spears. The kingdom of Bernewick was stripped of people now. Most had gone to the kingdom of Broceliande, that promised them land in return for war service. The old Roman settlements were deserted, and their fields were tangled with couchgrass. We Dumnonians walked north, with our spears trailing as we went to defend the last fortress of Ban's kingdom, Innistribes itself. The island city was crowded with fugitives. Every house slept 20. Children cried and families squabbled. Fishing boats carried some of the fugitives west to Broceliande or north to Britain. But there were never enough boats. And when the Frankish armies appeared on the shore facing the island, Ban ordered the remaining boats to stay anchored in Innistribes' awkward little harbour. He wanted them there so they could supply the garrison once the siege started. But shipmasters are a stubborn breed, and when the order came for them to stay, many hauled their anchors instead and ran north empty. Only a handful of boats remained. Lancelot was made commander of the city, and women cheered as he walked down the city's circling street. All would be well now, the citizens believed, for the greatest of soldiers was in command. He took the adulation gracefully, and made speeches in which he promised to build in Innistribes a new causeway from the skulls of dead Franks. The prince certainly looked the part of a hero, for he wore a suit of scale armour, on which every metal plate had been enamelled a dazzling white, so that the suit shone in the early spring sunshine. Lancelot claimed the armour had belonged to Agamemnon, a hero of antiquity, though Galahad assured me it was Roman work. Lancelot's boots were made of red leather, his cloak was dark blue, and at his hip, hanging from the embroidered sword-belt that had been Arthur's gift, he wore Tanchredwyr, Bright-Killer, his sword. His helmet was black, crested with the spread wings of a sea-eagle. "So we can fly away," Cavan, my dour Irishman, commented sourly. Lancelot convened a council of war in the high, wind-kissed chamber next to Ban's library. It was low tide, and the sea had fled from the bay's sandbanks, where groups of Franks were trying to find a safe path to the city. Galahad had planted false withies all across the bay, trying to lead the enemy into quicksands, or else onto firm banks that would be the first to be cut off when the tide turned and seethed across the bay. Lancelot, his back to the enemy, told us his strategy. His father sat on one side of him, his mother on the other, and both nodded at their son's wisdom. "The defence of Innistribes was simple," Lancelot announced. "All we needed to do was hold the island's walls. Nothing else. The Franks had few boats, they could not fly, so they must walk to Innistribes, and that was a journey they could only make at low tide, and after they had discovered the safe route across the tidal plain. Once at the city, they would be tired, and never able to scale the stone walls. Hold the walls, Lancelot said, and we stay safe. Boats can supply us. Innistribes need never fall." "True, true," King Ban said, cheered by his son's optimism. "How much food do we have?" Killock growled the question. Lancelot gave him a pitying look. "The sea," he said, "is full of fish. They're the shiny things, Lord Killock, with tails and fins. You eat them?" "I didn't know," Killock said straight-faced. "I've been too busy killing Franks."